All right, welcome back to another episode of the Clarity Corner. We actually have a special guest today, my father, Harold Carmean, and a lot of people say that we look just alike, and I think that's true, though he's a little bit older than me. You might notice, too, we're in a little bit different surroundings. We're actually recording this down in the Outer Banks during Thanksgiving week. So this is actually our 13th year. Can you believe that?
It's a long time.
Of coming down to the Outer Banks for Thanksgiving week, which all started when Landon was not quite one, and we had his first Thanksgiving, and I think we went to 4 different Thanksgiving dinners, and we're miserable from all that food. Now, that's a first world problem to have, that we had too much food. I realized that, but we didn't enjoy it at all. So the next year I said, hey, I got an idea. Let's go down to the Outer Banks. We can rent a big house. We can bring both sides of the family, and we don't have to leave. And it took some convincing. My mom was still alive at that time, and I don't think she believed grocery stores existed outside Sussex County. But we convinced her, and we all came down and have been doing it ever since. And it's been a good time. We get to spend time with Mandy's parents, my parents, the kids, and for the last 10 years or 11 years, I think, Lexi, your family's been coming down, which is my father-in-law's brother, Uncle Alvin, and Aunt Dana, come down with their family, which is Lexi, who you guys know, and her brother Dylan, and have been a good part of this and tradition with everything. So, purpose of this podcast, when Lexi first came to me and said, hey, when we're down in the Outer Banks, I want you to interview your dad. I was kind of taken back and thought, man, that's a really good idea. And maybe people can gain some insight, myself included, on why we do the things that we do, why I'm like I am, both the good and the bad maybe. Maybe we'll leave the bad out of that. But, Dad, it's a privilege to have you on this today.
Thank you.
And hopefully we get to dive deep on lessons that you taught me in business and life and things like that. So I do want to kick it off, however, with you graduated college and you were a phys ed teacher the next year coaching high school basketball.
Coaching JV basketball. Yes, my degree was actually in physical education from Shepherd College. Got out of college. At that point in time, teachers were a dime a dozen, and I only had a part-time job. So I worked a couple years as an elementary physical education teacher. And then a job came along in life insurance, and I took that for a while and absolutely hated salesmanship.
What life insurance company was that? Who was that?
Farm Family. Farm Family. It was a life insurance company geared totally to the agricultural industry and farmers, but you could sell it to anybody. I started out like gangbusters because I sold to all the family.
Right.
But after that, ran out of clients, and I was about 26 years old at the time, and just didn't like that. So ended up getting a job, summer youth program through CETA, which was putting young kids to work through summer jobs, and took that job at the county. And after that, while I was at that job in the summer, a job came open with the Sussex County Assessment Division.
Well, hold on a second. Back up. So what you're teaching, when did you know that wasn't the career path for you?
And I couldn't get a job.
So, but you did teach for 1 year.
Yeah, 2 years. 2 years and coached basketball, loved it, loved working with kids and whatnot. But
they didn't renew the contract?
I needed a full-time employment.
Gotcha.
And so this opportunity came along with the insurance company.
Gotcha. All right. So then we did insurance. Didn't enjoy that part of it. Sales part, and then got a job with the county in the assessment office. Now, how old are you at this point?
26.
26. And what is the job at the assessment office?
The Sussex County Assessment Division took care of doing all the assessments, which is property appraisals for the county, billing those out, and that's how the tax revenue was generated. So I had a staff of at 26 years old, I had a staff of about 25, which included about 7 men and 18 women. And you were responsible for when property was assessed, when somebody built a house or something like that, going out, assessing that property, putting it on the tax rolls so it could be billed for revenue for the county.
Gotcha. Now, knowing us and our libertarian views, let's say, how was it working in a government environment? Did you see things you liked? Did you see things like bureaucracy and things like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was an eye-opener for me at 26 because I learned more about life, probably, and careers, those first 2 or 3 years in the assessment office than I did from college. There's things that I learned at that age that only life teaches you. I saw a lot of government bureaucracy from the standpoint that at the same time I was getting a business degree, my master's in business, because I knew that was the direction that I wanted to take. And I could just see a lot of government bureaucracy and waste in there. And really, for lack of a better word, a lack of intensity and desire to work. It was just like a job for them where they would come and put in the time, and there was no real direction or purpose.
Gotcha.
I learned that early in my career.
Let's go back for a second because this is something we often talk about with college. You said you learned more about life and things in the first couple years than you did in college. And I think that's important. One thing you always stressed to me is that when you go to college, major in something that you like, but learn the critical thinking skills.
That's right.
And I've seen that in the people that we've brought on board to our team, not necessarily saying they're a financial planning major, but whatever it was that they majored in, how is their critical thinking skills, or how are their critical thinking skills? Do they function well independently? And how is their work ethic? Give me those three things. I don't care if they majored in
Absolutely.
botany.
Absolutely.
We'll find a place for them with that skill set.
Well, that's a perfect example. I majored in physical education and ended up running an assessment office, followed into a career of my own in appraisals. So it was critical thinking process. It doesn't matter what you do, just think through the process.
I agree. And you've instilled that in me from a very young age, certainly. So I remember when you got your business degree,
MBA.
Your MBA, because you graduated from Wilmington College, right? I remember being at that ceremony. How old was I at that point? What year was it?
Gosh, let's see. That was probably you were born in 77. Man, you weren't too old because that was probably about 84 or something like that.
Yeah.
Even 83. Yeah, I got it at a young age.
I do have a memory of that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So got your MBA, you're still working at the assessment office, but you said there was more that you wanted to do in business. So what was that more?
Well, I started learning, I really liked the assessment process, the appraisal process, the value in property. And I got really interested in real estate. In fact, my dad and I bought a lot at the beach, and we just started buying real estate. So I got really interested in real estate. And while I was at the county, I had an opportunity to take appraisal courses, which you need to go into the appraisal profession at that time. You had to be licensed. So I started taking those courses and whatnot, and I really just liked the business aspect of it. I liked the analytical aspect of analyzing properties, cash flows, things like that, to value properties. And I ended up getting an appraisal license. And about that time, a gentleman from Sussex County he was from Sussex County, excuse me, and he owned a business in Wilmington, and he asked me if I wanted to go in business with him. And after 12 years in the assessment office, I made the hard decision of leaving that government job and the security of that to go out on my own. I think I was about 34 at the age, something like that.
Excellent. So 34 when you made that
Somewhere
decision.
in there, I think.
14, how old am I? I'm 48. And so 14 years.
It was 1991. That's what it was. So 1991 is when I left the assessment office.
Okay.
You would have been 14.
Yes, but I'm counting back from when I opened this business. I was 34 as well. So making a good living, very secure, and made that decision to go out. It is very scary.
I remember, going out and when you leave, there's no guarantees. And I remember sitting in the assessment office. I took the secretary who had been my secretary for a number of years. She left and went with me. And I can remember sitting in that office, in the assessment office, day after day with a notepad, figuring out how we were going to make money, charge, to make it. And it's just a leap of faith. You just got to have the fortitude that you don't look back and you do it.
Now, that decision, too, was made in your kind of old life, pre-Jesus life, too.
Oh, amen.
So my decision was made post that, but I can remember coming home to Mandy and saying, I feel very unevenly yoked where we were. And we were making a lot of money, doing very well. Right. Where I was, nothing against them. They taught me how to be successful from the aspect of making money, but didn't teach me how to build a successful business. And like you, I always knew there was more and a vision I saw of how this process should go. And I remember coming home telling Mandy that. I said, God's moving us to go out on our own. And I knew what that meant. A lot of risk, no revenue, lifestyle change, and a lot of hard work. But through that process, I remember coming to you. We prayed about it. Mandy and I prayed about it. And I don't want to say it was the easiest decision I ever made, but it was the most peaceful, because I knew succeed or fail, I was okay with that. Now, of course, I wanted it to succeed, and we've been very blessed to have it succeed. But it was a very peaceful decision on that. So when we opened February of 2011, opened up and went from revenue to zero revenue and a whole lot of bills. And I can remember, some of you out there have heard this story before. It was probably 2 weeks of being open, little stressed. I'm in on a Saturday, putting a shelf together in the office, and Mandy called, and she's like, are you ever going to check your phone? And I said, babe, I'm trying to put a shelf together. I got a lot of stress on me. She's like, check your phone. And when I checked it, the text message was of a pregnancy test, and that was Landon. She was pregnant. So I immediately started crying because I was overjoyed and happy we were going to have our first baby, but also crying from the aspect of, how in the heck am I going to pay for this thing? What have I done? I left all this income. Now we have nothing, all these bills, but fortunately, it's worked out from that. But I understand that decision of not only knowing that you have more potential and you don't want to waste being a steward of the talent God blessed you with and skills, but also the process is different, at least for me, in terms of how I thought our business should be set up and how it should be client central. So, but back to you.
I just want to go back to a second. I remember when you made that decision, and I can remember being out to lunch one day with you, and you had the same. It was ironic because you were sitting there. He's going, if I could just get to this number, I'll be able to pay this. If I can, and I can remember going over and over and over. And it just flashed back to me the same things that I went back. And I remember encouraging you that I could feel where you were, and, not the uneasiness, but it's an uneasiness.
It is.
And just telling you, hey, it'll work out, because I had been there and seen that and knew it would with you too.
Yeah, I went 2 years, I think, without a paycheck. We lived off of Mandy's teaching salary, but I wanted to make sure that my people got paid. Never missed payroll. Lost a lot of hair in the process, but didn't miss payroll. So then you went into partners. Did you become a partner instantly with them? How was that situation?
Yeah.
How was that set up?
We were instantly partners for about 3 years. We rented a place in Georgetown and opened up. There's just me and my secretary, and we hired 2 other people as staff to do appraisals.
Now, were you doing just residential at this point, or commercial?
We were doing commercial.
So I remember the residential days where it was a couple $100 to do one appraisal. And I remember sitting in the living room when a big estate needed, a person passed away. It was a large estate, and you got the call that they were hiring you to appraise the estate. And I remember those figures. I remember how happy you were, and that was awesome. I feel like that was the launching point for going to the commercial side.
I remember Nancy sitting there on a, guys that weren't typewriters.
Word
processor. And waiting out and all that. Oh man, that was the dinosaur days.
Mm-hmm. So you're in partners with someone, and I know how this goes. I know you well. Inevitably, there's going to be some things where you're not necessarily going to agree. So how long were you in that partnership?
We started in 91 and 95. I went out on my own, which was another turning point because virtually I felt like I was getting the business, running everything. We had actually, Nancy and I had actually taken the risk of building a small office in Georgetown at that time. And I can remember Nancy saying, what happens if we don't make it? I said, we just sell it. No problem. So that was a turning point right there of another step of building our own office. And we leased it back to the company that my partner and I owned. And he just started working. And I said, again, I really don't need a partner in this. Mm-hmm. And so I went to him and said, hey, I'm, going out on my own. And I mean, that was another turning point. You had no support at all, man. It's you having to make it.
Yeah. And at this point, still pre-Jesus.
Yep.
All right. Now, it's funny you mentioned to Nancy that's my mom. If we don't make it, we don't make it. And I can remember that being instilled in me at an early age. We always used to say, if it doesn't make it, I'll sell fruit on the side of the road, but it'll be mine and I'll figure out how to get it done. I'm okay with it riding on me, on that.
Well, I saw my dad, my dad he had a lot of street smarts, no formal education. But I just saw him have a work ethic that just made it work. He'd do whatever he had to do to make it work.
So let's hit that for a second. And this might lend some of our quality as stubbornness, might explain some of it. Because I often get the question, hey, why did you go into business with your dad? That would have been an easy path. And that, I would ask you the same question. So Pop owned a trucking business, a small trucking business that hauled soybeans and corn kind of up and down the East Coast.
Yep.
Sawdust. And I can remember being in that shop at an early age. Why didn't you want to get in that business, refine it, maybe go from the business aspect as opposed to the trucking aspect of it?
And that's a good question. And I looked at that and just never had that desire. And I think you took a lot of this too with you. I wanted to do my own thing. I knew the business principles. I could see that. But I just wanted to have my own frontier, to establish my own business that I developed and whatnot. And I didn't want him there telling me what to do every day and say it was handed to you. And I don't want to speak for you, but I can see a lot of that in you. Right? You didn't want something handed to you. You saw the principles. I saw the principles from my dad. I took that. And then I think you saw those same principles and said, hey, I don't want to do appraisals. You had an interest in it at one time, but then you said, no, this isn't me. But you took those business principles and applied them to your business.
Yeah, I would like to paint the picture that it was all that, but there's also some stubbornness in there. Yeah. There's, hey, I can do this better than my father. I don't need him to help me out in business and things. But I work with a lot of family-owned businesses now where it's generational have come into the business. And sometimes I view that and I watch them work together in all different aspects where they work together really well. And then when they don't work together, naturally from a father-son or father-daughter, mother-daughter, however that dynamic is, they're going to disagree some. And I don't look at that in a bad way. I look at that as life. And sometimes I think, man, that would have been really cool to work together and continue to build. So I do miss that aspect of it. Not that we haven't done other things together like real estate. So I do see the attractiveness to that. And I will say that every business, family-owned business that we work with, our fear was I wanted to prove myself and do it on my own. But I see that in the son or daughter who comes into the business too. And
better than the past.
They do. They take it to lengths and levels that their parent wouldn't have dreamed of, which the parent is very excited about and proud of on that. So I don't want to discount that. It is awesome to see that. But with us, I know with me, there is a part of it that said, I can do this better. I can be more successful. Now, sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's certainly a bad thing. So didn't want to follow into his footsteps. So now we're at the point where you said, hey, why do I need a partner? And you end up dissolving that partnership with him. I don't want to say you're starting over, but again, everything's going to fall on you. We're going to leave some guarantees. and we go into Carmean Appraisal Group at this point, and you're strictly doing all commercial at this point.
Yep.
And what year was this?
95.
95.
Same year you started college.
Okay. That is some stress.
That was some super stress. Nancy and I talked about it, and I can remember, in fact, I think before you left for college, we got into the new office. So you're starting college as a freshman, and I'm my fourth year in business, first year in business by myself.
Bumps in the road when that started. Were there any? Was it always smooth sailing?
No, it's not smooth sailing. It's what you make it. If you have a drive to succeed, you're going to succeed no matter what. I was working 7 days a week. I was putting in the time and whatnot. And, Nancy was helping me. And it was just, a supportive wife the whole time meant a lot. That, and we just made it. We just made it happen.
So Nancy did work there a little bit to help.
At the same time, I was on the school board.
Yeah.
And
so a lot there.
There was a lot going on.
Now, my grandmother, my mom, Doris, also worked for you, and that proved that family...
That was a bump in the road.
We do not work well with family. No. We are a very matter-of-fact, here's the order, let's go, check your feelings at the door type people, and that's hard with family.
I can remember a funny story. One day, my mom, I walked in, and we're result-oriented driven, no doubt. Both of us are like that. And it was a hectic day, and I walked in the office one day, and Mom's at the computer with my secretary. And I said, open those windows, and I met the window application. Mom looks, and she says, it's cold outside. Why does he want to open a window? Just little things like that,
Well, you are a man of patience, so, and I inherited that, honestly. So how old was my mom at that point? She had to be 80?
She's retired. Yeah, she's in her late 80s, mid-80s.
She also liked to work. She retired from 3 careers.
Yep.
The government, the water company, and the library at Delta. So I can remember starting out then from college and worked for a large corporate firm in Philadelphia and was excited. And I remember a lot of advice that you gave me, like, listen, son, this isn't easy. I'll do what I can for you, but this is going to be hard. And I knew early success didn't mean continued success. I knew the statistics up there in a large corporate firm that if they hire 5 people, 2 are around in 3 years, 1's still around in 5 years. But I knew I wanted to be one of those 1. Like, it wasn't a question of whether that was going to happen or not. However, the corporate route, I know I inherited this from you, was definitely not for me. Same thing in the partnership. I was in Philadelphia, driving down to Lower Delaware, writing a lot of the business and getting clients here, and they were just keeping a ton of it, weren't offering much help. And, it was really a cutthroat business up there, which I didn't mind, but I just didn't want to be around that environment at all, no matter what the financial implication of that was. But I remember that advice, and I remember you telling me, too, that, listen, when you start out, you're going to have to take every piece of business there is. And there's going to be some clients that you take on that you're going to regret. But when you start out, you have to do it, and that's the only way you learn. And I remember looking at you, and you were in that position at that point, similar to what we are now, where you can pick and choose who you work with. You can kind of screen based on personality. No matter what the financial implication is, are you going to enjoy this process? Right. And I remember you telling me you're not there yet and you're a long ways from it. So just grind it out. And that was true, because I certainly over those years have entered into some relationships where I thought this is probably not going to work out, but I'll find something good that we get along with. And there's just some people out there you can't please, no matter how hard you work on that. But also say, through the years, and whether it's your business, my business, or different real estate things that we've done, or really just anything, you taught me how to assign a value to the intangible things, right? Peace of mind, sleep, and certainly family time or free time. There's a value to that. I apply that often in the planning work that we do. There's what looks good on paper and what works out statistically and the numbers, but are you going to lose sleep over that decision, right? Big topic is always, do I pay off my mortgage? It's at a 3% interest rate. Well, if you take someone who can't stand having debt, even if they're earning 5%, let's say, on a money market, and their mortgage is at 3%, you work the numbers, the CPA might be saying one thing, they're going to lose sleep over having that debt go in the bank. So what is that value of that peace of mind and sleep? And you taught me how to assign a value to it. Now, you can't get within the penny, but you have to take that into consideration. With everything, whether it's buying a used car, new car, whether it's hiring somebody for this service or not, or doing it yourself, balancing out what you want to learn and do and get satisfaction of versus, hey, I want to go spend time with the kids and have a catch or take a vacation with them versus outsourcing that. And I would say that's definitely a big thing. The last thing I want to hit on with business before we transition here to talk about another aspect of your life is, Pop never had a partner. You had a partner for a brief time and got out of it, but you've always wanted to be solo. And I don't know whether that, learning about how many people you managed at the county in the assessment office, whether that gave you kind of a bad taste in your mouth for that, but we're opposite in that. You like to run solo with a few team members, one or two, where I'm the opposite. I want to continue to grow that team. So tell me a little bit about that. Why?
Well, that probably stems a great deal from selfishness.
All right.
Because I grew up as an only child, so I didn't have to share anything. And I just got to the point where I guess I made the decisions, and we had some people working for us, and they just, like, I would have doing appraisals, whether it be residential or commercial. We hired some commercial people, and they just didn't seem to do the job to the quality that I wanted it to. And probably for lack of patience, I made a decision early on in my career that I'm just going to work harder, take less money, not the corporate thing, take less money, but enjoy what I do and be successful at that. And I just didn't have a knack for employing people and bringing them along, unlike you. You did. And you've been successful with that. Looking back, I don't regret that. It's just that I had to work harder for that, but it was just the way I was built.
Well, you said, you found the most enjoyment from doing the thing, doing the appraisals. That's the part that you really enjoyed. So I can see that, and not necessarily, hey, I don't want to share with anyone, but I enjoy this and I'm going to do that.
Perfection. I wanted to, if it was my appraisal, if I had the answer, I'm going to take full responsibility for that and do it.
So I would answer that question a little bit differently. I grew up an only child, so my desire to have other people around stems from that, not having anyone around, a brother or sister growing up. And I knew when I built the business, whatever that profession was, that my ultimate goal was to see a team come in, learn, grow, be successful, and watch that. I remember one of the good things I got out of the corporate environment in Philadelphia, when I sat down, kind of signed my contract after like a 2-month trial period, the president of that large firm kind of went through our, opening script or whatever. And I said, I work for XYZ company, the company at the time. And he stopped me and said, hey, I want you to change that. You don't work for us, you work with us. He said, I am here to make you successful. Right. And that always stuck with me. So my goal has always been, I want to hire and bring on awesome human beings that have good critical thinking skills, work independently, and have a great work ethic. And I've been blessed with that. Now, it's taken some time to get that. I would say that process has been a little slower, but from a good point. You always taught me, always evaluate every deal, whether it's a no or not, because it'll make your decision on what you do want, qualities you do want, stronger later on. And that was the process with the team. And the goal is to enable them and give them the tools to be so successful that if they ever wanted to leave or something ever happened to me, they could go anywhere they wanted and get paid top dollar because they're the best at what they do, whatever their role is. But then create an environment where no one would want to leave inside that. So I continue to work on that. I've succeeded in some parts, I've failed in others, but we just keep moving forward.
My whole dynamics, and we'll get into that later, has changed about how to think about that going to the church. But one of the things I wanted to talk about too is the standard's going to be high for Addie and Landon, because throughout the generations, I feel I was more of a success at my business than Dad was. Not just doing more things, I can just see a difference in that. And then I can see you being so much more successful than me because I was a sole proprietor. You developed that atmosphere of helping people and whatnot. So the standard's going to be high for Addie and Landon.
It will be high for them, but whatever they want to do,
right.
I'll support it. But I wouldn't say necessarily more successful than you. It's just a different aspect of it. I want to grow the practice in the firm to a point where, like I said, the better they do, the team does, the better I will do. So I'll do whatever I can. But important things like, you said when you do the appraisals, it's your stamp of approval. It's your name. It's your word on that. Same thing. We have a very high standard in quality of work. We don't cut any corners. Attention to detail is everything. How you do anything is how you do everything. And sometimes I have to step back. We do that. But you had mentioned, training people, they are going to do things a different way. And what I've learned is they do it better than what I can do it. Certainly, I can remember training Tristan, and he excelled quickly. And then watching Tristan train Jordan, which is hilarious because I watched the things he struggled with that, because I struggled with them too, and getting to advise and help out and provide some wisdom on that process. Then watching Jordan train everyone, and really everyone on that team, it's awesome to watch them develop. And every once in a while, you like to do the appraisals because that's the thing you enjoy. I like to get back in the weeds and do things in the office, but most of the time I'm in the way because they all do it better. And if I get in the way, it disrupts things. So oftentimes I have to step back. But, my role has certainly changed big time over the last 4 or 5 years with that, and that's due to how awesome everyone is on the team. Certainly with that. So let's go back to 97. And I remember that year vividly. And what I want to get to, and what many of you may not know out there, is you're very, very heavily involved in prison ministry. So you go into prisons with all types of offenders, from murderers to drug offenders to you name it, and you mentor them, preach to them, hang out, build relationship with. And now you're the pastor of our church that was down the road, Cokesbury Church, and a lot of your attendees are people that used to mentor in the prisons. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Tell me about that journey.
Sure. Man, we don't have enough time. In 98, we had the business. And as I mentioned before, the secretary that I had at the county came with me in the appraisal business. And in 97 or 98, she had a tumor on her side. She let it go for about a year. And she goes and she has the tumor out. She took about 3 weeks and she had to get the operation. And I remember she called me and she says, she had the tumor out, and then she went back to the doctor for a pathology report. The doctor told her, says, it's not cancerous. And so she calls me on the phone and she says, my tumor was not cancerous. And she goes, praise the Lord. And I'm like, huh? Praise the Lord. And she says, well, a week before I had the operation, I went to church and I got saved. And I'm like, oh my God. And so she came back to work 2 weeks later and she just started witnessing to. It was like a complete conversion. Complete conversion. And she just started witnessing to me about Christ and, those things. And Like I fired her, I cussed her, I fired her again, cussed her. And I just like, I don't want to hear it. I'm a good person. Everything's good. And about that same time, a real good friend of mine he was a developer. He was a good friend of yours.
You can mention his name.
Prep came by. And at the same time, man, and he starts hounding me on all this stuff. And he tells the story, he was on his way to a business meeting and God told him to come see me. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Yeah, you're going to do it. So both of them are teaming up on me. I don't want to hear it. And he comes back a second day. He did this for like 3 days in a row. Just kept coming back. And then it was all of a sudden, man, there was just one down and I'm just, and that was it.
You gave your life to the Lord. What's funny is, or ironic, is Brett plays a big part in my story as well. So Brett, if you're listening right here, he's probably tapping someone saying, hey, that's me. For that. So when I was this is 99, 2000, working for the firm in Philly, and, I came down, met with Brett, and Brett was in his late 40s at the time because you guys are the same age. And I remember we were doing some estate planning, and he opened up and he said, none of this is mine. It's all God's. And I was sitting there like, whatever. I know as soon as he signs this paperwork, I'm going to make a ton of money. And that's all I cared about. And he just kept going on. And, we did some estate planning, and his trustee turned out to be his pastor at the time. And he said, you've got to get these signatures from him. He's going to be the trustee. So I go down there to the church, see him, and he just starts talking to me about God. And I remember breaking down in tears. And I was living in PA at the time. And he said, I have a church that I want you to go to. And so went to that church, loved it. Never seen a service like that before, where it's non-denominational and there was praise and worship, and it was more about the relationship. Went home that night, and I was living with someone at the time. This is way back, pre-Mandy. And we still had house phones at the time, home phones, and you didn't have call screening, really no caller ID. And I remember getting a phone call from an elder there or something from the church, and they said, hey, thank you for coming to the church, all this. I said, hey, we enjoyed it. We look forward to coming back. And then I had mentioned, I was living with someone, and he said, are you married? I said, no. And he instantly said, well, you're going to hell. You got to change that. And I said, okay, buddy, well, that adventure's over. I'll talk to you later. Hung up the phone. Probably not 30 minutes later, we got a cold call, or what I thought was a telemarketing call. I'll never forget. His name was Dave Hakes. And he said, you could tell that he had been making calls all day, because this is the evening. You could tell it in his voice. He said, hi, this is Dave Hakes. We're planning a new church called Daybreak Community Church in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. Would you be interested in coming? And I said, actually, yeah, we're looking for a church. And he said,
works.
And he said, really? And I said, absolutely. And so we ended up going to that church. And, the pastor there had planted this church. He was from a different state. He was young, John Pletcher, and kind of took me under his wing. And we would get lunch every week at Chili's in King of Prussia. And I remember him asking me, as, I grew in faith and grew, and a lot of lessons and things. And he looked at me and he said, what's the holdup, Hal? And I said, I'm afraid that I'm not going to have fun anymore.
Yeah.
And he said, Hal, the things that you think are fun will no longer be fun to you. And I remember that vividly. And God saved my journey, much like everyone thinks that your journey's just straight after that, and there's no complications. That's definitely not the case. Some highs, some lows, some off the path and things. But I remember from that day forward, even if I went back to the old things that used to bring me happiness, they didn't.
That's right.
And so you would try to fill your heart with more of it because you're like, hey, I used to enjoy this. I need more of it. And it never did from that aspect. So got saved in 98. Brett played a big part in that, in mine and yours. And then how did you get into prison ministry?
At the time that I got saved, I owned a probation and parole office right across from the Baptist church. And about 2 years before I got saved, the pastor to that church came to me, and they were doing an expansion, and they wanted to tie in to my sewer. I had sewer across the road at my probation and parole. And Frank Purdue and him came to our office. And I remember sitting down with him, and I knew Frank Purdue well. And I talked to him and having a business mind. Okay, Bible thumpers. That's good. You're a Bible thumper, but, this is a business. If you want the sewer, you're going to have to pay to get it because I got it. You want it. Here's the fee. And so that never materialized because God's obviously smarter than me, and they expanded without the sewer because they went to the parcel next to mine, which is state, and got it. So I had the probation and parole office, and I was going to work one day. I can just remember it, man. And I just started crying. God just spoke to me, and he just said, I want you to use that building for my glory. I want you to use that building for my glory. I'm like, what? So I didn't know where to go, but I knew the pastor who had come to me 2 years later. So I called him up on the phone, and he's like, gosh, what have we done now, man? What have I done to this man? And he comes down. I remember sitting in front of me in my conference room, and I said, I've got saved, and I want to know how to use that stuff. All a smile on his face, and he says, I remember this. He said, we've been praying. You've been praying.
Speak a little louder, Ned. Into
so that really, that touched me, and I'm like, wow, this is real. So he says, I don't know how to help you with this. He says, but the chaplain, this is how God works. The chaplain to the prison, which was went to their church, is the chaplain at the prison. He says, I'll put him in touch with you. His name was Larry Lilly. So I had a meeting with Larry Lilly, and I was all excited, about getting into God's called me to do this. And I remember he looked at me and he said, time will tell, son. Time will tell. And I took prison ministry courses and just started in the prison and been there ever since. And it's just been a blessing. I don't know why God called me to it, because I'm not a great person, but I've never been in trouble from the standpoint of being arrested. But it's just a calling that God's put on my life. And I've been in there since 1999. So that's 26 years.
Do you ever get scared going in there?
No. That peace that you had, there's a peace that it's just a calling, and there's a peace. And there was a period of time where I went into, it's called the pretrial, and you're in this block building with them. There's no guard. The guard can't even see you, and there's no way out. And I've been in there with 40 or 50, and I can remember them walking in with tattoos. And I'm not saying that, like, Lord, just don't let me get killed in here. But those same people, you just give them Jesus, and the transformation that you see. The old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. Like, I've had grown men with tattoos that tower over me come up and pray over me and just be in tears, just praying over me. So it's just a transformation and this gift from God that you can't understand until you do it.
So you won't fly on a plane, but you'll go into a maximum security prison.
That's correct.
God doesn't want you on a plane? I think that has more to do with the control aspect.
That's probably true.
So I want to ask this question, but I want you to go a little deeper than just the surface answer. What do you get more fulfillment out of? The business aspect of your life or the ministry aspect?
Definitely the ministry aspect.
Okay.
Definitely.
Now, are those two things separate?
Not really. Because the one thing, going back to that, and I was thinking about this the whole time you were talking about as a business person. As a business person, I did it on my own. As a pastor, it's the complete opposite. You want people to get the fullness of life in Jesus Christ. You want them to experience what you have experienced, that transformation, okay? So when somebody comes, you have a desire for them to be the best that they can be according to what God has designed them to be. And that's key to any ministry. Prison ministry, it's a transformation. We have people in our prison or in our church. We got a guy in our church who's an elder who played in the prison praise band. That's a transformation. It's just the complete opposite of what I did in the business aspect. It's to encourage people, tell people about Christ, have them experience that fullness that God has to offer in life. It's just like you said, the things of the world you don't want anymore. Only that peace and joy can come through Christ.
I think you hit on it too, like who they are, develop. God calls us to be a steward of everything that he's blessed us with. And that's just not financial, that's skills, talents, abilities, and developing those in others. I would say that for me, business is just part of the ministry.
Absolutely.
You've heard me say this before, and in this season of my life, my mission statement and the screen upon which I say yes or no to a lot of things is to share God's story through serving others by exhausting every skill, talent, ability he's blessed me with. I think it's important that everyone have that mission statement because it gives us good guardrails because we get pulled in 1,000 different directions. It could be something that sounds awesome. Why wouldn't God want us doing that? But there's a limit to our time and saying yes or no. So that's the filter upon which I put things through because I do a lot of mission work all over. And it pulls me away from the family sometimes. But Mady and I have a good boundary with that and relationship that she'll ask when I've been away doing various things and serving. She'll say, hey, do you have any more trips planned for the year? And I'll say no. And she'll say, good, you're done till the end of the year. And that's it on that. Because that's a lot on her, too, with the kids. But I would say, back to that, everything that you do is ministry.
Amen.
So I don't want people to think I got to quit my job or profession if I want to grow close to Christ and mentor others or witness to others. It's in all aspects.
Absolutely.
Is your ministry.
You're that light that you shine. I tell that congregation all the time. You're that light that shines. You're that light in that darkness. The world is darkness. It's around us every day in society. And God will use you just to smile, just to thank you, just, how do you treat people, that life that you live. And people know it when you live it. It's not about what you talk. It's about what you live. And people will see that difference and they're drawn to that. That's how God uses people. Not everybody's going to be a pastor or a Sunday school teacher.
No, and I think it's important to highlight that no one's perfect.
Amen.
The church is filled with sinners and imperfect people, and the church has not done a good job of advertising that. We see it all the time. Get saved, life isn't easier. You still have to deal with people, and even some of the worst people to deal with can be church people. And we're all flawed, and that's the attractiveness that I think the world needs to know about Jesus, is that we're all flawed, we're all not perfect, and the reason Jesus came was to take that forgiveness for our sins so that we can be with God. And if we were perfect, we wouldn't need Jesus. I fail all the time, constantly. You and I argue all the time. And I think that is our personality of us wanting to hold each other to a higher standard, seeing a different viewpoint. We just don't ever communicate it the best. We communicate it like we would communicate to my mom when you asked her to open up windows. But we have a great relationship with that. We move past those things, and we just want each other to realize potential, realize it from a biblical aspect in all that we do. On that.
Two things I live by in the gospel is truth and love. And that's what Jesus did. He always told them the truth, but he did it out of love. And there's a difference there. You're right. I always tell our congregation, I'm preaching with you, not to you. Never stay in one place. I never preach from a pulpit. I hate that because I am not better than those people I'm preaching to. And I think when you preach from a pulpit, you're sending a message to those people that you know more than they do. When I preach in prison, or in our church, I'm up and down that aisle. I'm in constant contact with those people. And they know I care about them. And it's that contact with those people that there's an old adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's all about caring and loving those people and bringing them along in that relationship. And I tell them every day, I say, I'm not here to preach to you, I'm preaching with you. And I think one of the blessings that I've had in my ministry is I have worked in the world. I'm not a pastor that just sits there, by himself. I've worked in that world. I experienced those everyday things. I said, look, I go wrong. I get mad by Wednesday. I'm, might be cussing somebody out or something, and those things. And it's who we are. And we just ask for God's grace, and we're in a constant journey of growing more and more like him. But I agree with you, but too much legalisms in the church and looking down and,
it's about the
truth and love. Truth and love.
Well, Mandy always says, Hal, there's truth and grace. You like to go more towards the truth sometimes than grace. And it's not that it's 50-50. It's 100% of both.
Right. It's that balance in between.
It is. So you have another big event coming up to wrap up here. You're going to be officiating Lexi's wedding. So Jared, her fiance, is down here this week with us. Feel that he's opened up a lot more this time around. We got to play golf with him. He's really an awesome guy.
Yeah.
And that wedding's in
November.
It's November.
November coming up. And, it was a year ago this week. So last Thanksgiving, we were looking to hire someone. We didn't necessarily know what position we need filled from what aspect, but we knew we needed another team member. And we were looking at interns, experienced people, all that. And I'm sitting at the table upstairs. We're playing Uno. And I looked at Lexi. I'm like, hey, you big dummy. It's right in front of me. Lexi's smart, talented, and let's give this a go. So I talked to Alvin and said, hey, you think Lexi would want to come to work here? And met with her, and the rest is history. So her career trajectory has certainly taken off and been a huge blessing. One of the reasons we're back doing the podcast. So next year, her role is going to continue to evolve. So not only is she the head of marketing, when I say marketing, I would say that's client engagement. How can we get relevant content consistently to our clients through many different mediums? But she's going to be taking over the role of CFO of the company. So
Great.
Put a lot of trust and faith in her. And you want to talk? I'm telling you, Dad, I am the least talented person in that office. And I mean that. That's not just flattery. I am the least talented there. I'm surrounded by people that are incredibly talented, work hard, and it's awesome. It is awesome. I think a lot of people out there, I see it on my side of the business, if I'm doing any consulting on financial planning practices and business succession, is that, at least in my side of things, people want to be out front with their name and be the smartest person in the room. And I just don't think that's a recipe for success, maybe worldly success, but I'm the dumbest person in that room when I'm in my office.
It's an old adage. A good leader surrounds himself with people smarter than him.
Well, I've done that for sure. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Anything that you wanted to add, Dad, from any aspect? I mean, we could go on for hours talking about various things.
It's just you talking about the wedding yesterday. We left and Jared was talking, and he goes, we're on our way to the golf course. And he said, so you're a pastor? And I said, yeah. So we started talking about Jesus, and he says, yeah, I was in church and I need to go back to church. And I said, hey, that's great. I said, I got 2 churches for you. You can try ours, you can try ours. And so we talked a little bit about it. We're on the last hole of the golf course. And he goes, Lexi and I would like for you to officiate our wedding. And I go, I have this policy that I really don't marry anybody unless they're members of the church. But I said, for you, I'll make an exception. And he says, but we really need to get back in church. And we came back yesterday, and we were sitting at the table, and Jared walks up to Lexi, and he goes, we got to get back in church, Lexi. Man, I just made my day right there.
That's awesome.
So that's how it goes.
Well, we'd love to have you try out Discover Church. It was a little bit different than Dad's, and neither one is right or wrong. It's just the season of your life that you're in, where's going to be the best place that you can plug in, learn, grow, and have community in there. So, well, Dad, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It was cool. I learned some things, too, about your early career that I didn't know or had forgotten. And I appreciate everything that you've done for me, all the lessons that you taught. It certainly impacted my life, how I run the business, how I run my life and my family and everything like that. So I love you, and I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate everything you've done too, and you've given Nancy and I 2 great grandkids. Especially love that. Love it down here because we can spawn and hand them right back to you.
That we can. So
it's been great.
all right. Thanks a lot.